Emma, how are you, lovely?
I'm very good. How are you?
That's good. I am excellent. It's quite a okay day in Melbourne, and I get to catch up with you and finally meet you.
I know, finally.
Instagram to real life.
Do you know, Instagram is so powerful for that at the moment.
100% connections, collaborations, yeah.
Like so many good people I've connected with recently have become really good friends, like really good relationships, and then opportunities like this. So thank you for reaching out.
You're so welcome. The pros of social media when you use it in the right way. What have you been up to today?
Oh, do you know what? I've had a very relaxed morning. So I'm just taking some time at the moment to just be a bit more relaxed. I think I've been very go, go, go recently. So I'm just really taking time with my mornings. So yeah, this morning I just jumped out of bed, meditated straight away on the balcony, which was really beautiful. It was actually sunny back then, a few hours ago. And then just had a coffee, did some reading, and just took it really nice and slow. And then here we are having coffee.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds great. Thanks for the coffee as well.
No problem.
What are you most excited about in life right now?
Interesting. So as I mentioned to you before we jumped on, I'm in like a very in-between stage at the moment. So I'm really kind of in between leaving my old self and like really leaving like my old life kind of behind. Mm-hmm. And I'm in this stage of rebirth and just recreating myself. So I'm kind of in this stage of being what I would say like a blank canvas, which is so scary because there's so much unknown, so much uncertainty, which really is kind of like shaken me up in a lot of ways. But it's also the most exciting time for me. So I'm just excited to kind of just explore, just be curious, just kind of play with life. You know, just do things that I wouldn't normally do, say yes to opportunities that I wouldn't normally say yes to, and just explore. So that's exciting.
Awesome. It sounds like a super exciting time because you're transitioning, going into something new. And we've talked about it a little bit, so that's why I'm like, can't give it away or can't act like I know what you're talking about. I only know you from what I've seen on Instagram. I think we've been following each other for quite a while, a couple of months.
Yeah.
But I don't know too much about you. This is our first time meeting. So for the listeners that don't know much about you and myself, can you give us a wrap up of your life from start to where you are now and everything that you do now?
Okay, big question. So I was born and raised in the UK, as you can probably tell. And my mum's Australian, which is why I'm here now. So I'm very blessed for that passport. So I grew up near Brighton in a little place called Eastbourne. I don't know if you know it. Nope. No, not many people do. I think the average age is like 60. So I grew up there. I got into dance at a very young age. So I did my first dance competition when I was 5 years old. And I won that. So I won a trophy. And just from that day, I just became obsessed with dance. It was just a huge part of my life. So flash forward quite a few years. I ended up going to university to study dance. I was going to do events management because I've always been really interested in events and organization as well as speaking and that kind of thing. But I ended up doing dance, which was amazing. And it was such a fun 3 years in my life, but it was also probably the hardest 3 years of my life. So there was a lot of personal transformation, a lot of confrontational experiences. So if anything, I think uni gave me growth. Like I don't really care about the degree anymore. And then I came out of university and I was working in London doing like music videos, TV shows.
What type of dance were you doing?
At that point, it was commercial, but I studied contemporary.
Okay, yep.
Yeah. So they're probably my two favorite styles. And salsa. I secretly want to be a salsa dancer. But so I started working in London. That was really fun. That was really exciting. I was, meeting a lot of people, doing a lot of new experiences. Every day was different. And just kind of being in that buzz in London was just so exciting for me. But I was kind of 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Like I was kind of doing it half-heartedly. So I got to a crossroads and I had to ask myself the question, I either go to London, go full in, keep going, keep networking, keep kind of building, my life in that kind of entertainment industry, or I move to Australia. And I just packed up and left because I had such a niggling feeling in me that I wanted to travel. And I knew that if I didn't decide in that moment, I would have been stuck in this London clique and I wouldn't have actually done it. So I just took the leap, packed my bag. It wasn't even a suitcase. It was just a backpack. Moved to Australia. I traveled the East Coast, which was so beautiful. Have you traveled the East Coast?
Big fan. Yeah, in my van. I did it at the start of this
Amazing.
year. Yeah.
Yeah. So we got a camper van and we traveled. And I think that's when I fell in love with Australia, because you get to see the ins and outs of Australia. It's not just the big cities like Melbourne and Sydney. You get to see kind of, when you're driving along, you get to see the waterfalls and the nature and everything like that. So that's kind of when I fell in love with Australia. And then I was here for a couple of years, decided to move back home for a little bit, just because I felt like something was missing.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't quite sure if it was family or if it was work, or there was just something wasn't in alignment. So I moved back to England. And that's when I got into energy psychology. So that's when I did my practitioner training in emotional freedom technique. I don't know if you...
Oh, no.
Okay. And matrix re-imprinting, which sounds really...
It sounds wicked. Like, please go into this. Yeah.
So emotional freedom technique is basically, it uses acupressure points. So, you know, the Chinese use the meridian points in the body for acupuncture. So emotional freedom technique uses the same acupuncture points, but instead of needles, you just use acupressure. So you just use tapping.
Tapping. Yes. Yeah.
And it's basically just a way to basically release emotions that are trapped in your body and in your energy system. And just, oh my goodness, I had like the biggest life shifts when I was doing my practitioner training, because you don't realize how much, you know, trauma that happened when you were a child is still affecting you now and blocking you now. So that was really, really transformational for me. And then after the EFT course, I did matrix re-imprinting, which is kind of like an advancement of the EFT. And that just works with the matrix of energy fields that we all have. So we all have our own energy fields, and then, you know, we connect with other energy fields. And there's a lot to it, and it sounds very kind of, you know, NASA kind of thing. But yeah, it's just really, really interesting. And alongside the practitioner training, I was also running my own dance business. So I was teaching dance classes, which I absolutely loved. It was really, really good fun, but I got a back injury. And it was so... I tried to power through it, but it was actually so severe that I ended up having to quit the dance business, which was a blessing in disguise. And then, yeah, just packed up again and moved back to Australia. So I've kind of been here, there and everywhere. But I think for me, I've always been a very curious person. I've always wanted to go outside my comfort zone, try new things, new experiences, new environments. And so, you know, I have worked in several different industries, doing different jobs. I've lived in different countries. But for me, that's just enriched who I am today and my experience. So I don't regret any of it. Yeah, and then I've been back here for a couple of years now.
Amazing. And what are all the things you do now?
So I'm a meditation teacher, a holistic counselor, an energy healer, and an energy psychology practitioner.
Holistic counselor.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Nutrition.
No, so that's just like basically kind of like a life coach. So holistic counseling is just, you know, if someone has a problem, it's seeing the whole picture. It's a very holistic view of everything, which is just how I live my life anyway. So yeah, I did do some one-on-one coaching for about 9 to 10 months when I first moved back to Australia, and that was amazing. It was all online. That was a really great experience, and I love seeing people's shifts and progression, and it made me feel so alive inside. But I also felt like I was putting too much pressure on myself in a business sense. I am definitely a high achiever, and I'm a recovering perfectionist. So I think at that point I was just putting so much pressure on myself, and I needed to take a step back. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to settle in Australia again, because I was quite homesick when I moved over, and I was just trying to do too much at once. So I was like, there's nothing wrong with just taking a complete break and just doing me. So that's kind of what I've been doing. And I did do some more training, like the meditation teaching and everything I did this year. And then now I'm in this fun kind of in-between stage where I'm just figuring out my next steps and kind of where I want to go with it.
That is epic. Okay, can't wait to delve into all of this.
Yep.
How, for you, similar path in terms of like following something as an athlete, dancer, soccer player, how did it feel to have to stop doing that?
Painful.
Something that you loved doing and thought, maybe, was it, am I right in saying that it was something you wanted to do for a long time? Thought you were going to be doing for the rest of your life?
Do you know what? That's an interesting question. I feel like I've always had a sense that that's not what I'm going to be doing. But dance is such a big part of me. It's almost like dance is my language. Like when I was growing up, I couldn't express myself through words, which now I can't stop talking. So like, a lot of things have changed. But when I was younger, I couldn't express myself through words. So going to a dance class was my way to express myself and to, release any feelings and emotions was through movement. So I think it's always going to be a part of my life. And I actually do have some ideas that I want to incorporate the teaching and the meditation and the energy stuff with dance, because I think it's just such a release and a confidence boost. But I also completely trust the universe. And, I had that injury for a reason. So if that's not meant to be, then, I'm just going to roll with it. I think sometimes we don't understand why, but it happens because the universe has a different future in mind for us, and we just have to trust it. So
it's just that there's little detours on the journey. Like the journey's, life, and then we think it's going to be this way, but we never know, and it's just a little detour, and
that's the fun of it as well. That's the journey. And I actually think ever since I was kind of a teenager, I always knew that I wanted to help people. I definitely grew up as an empath, and obviously being in a family of energy healers, and I've always been in that spiritual, holistic health environment. So I always wanted to help people. But I think I just took different routes to get there. So like when I was teaching my dance classes, it was called Commercial Fierce. And the reason I came up with that name is because I feel like everyone has this fierce side in them that they haven't been able to release. So dance was my tool to allow women to feel confident and to express themselves and to just unleash that fierceness within them. And I've realized it's actually because that's what I've struggled with the most, is I've rejected a part of myself. And so I've always wanted to help people with the one thing that I've struggled with, which is to let that person come out. And I think the last few months, she's come out.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it's been like a wild ride of transformation recently. But I think now I've really I found that part of myself that I was longing for so much. So, yeah.
That is so cool. And so proud of you for doing that.
Thank you.
In those moments, though, actually, one thing that really came to mind when you were saying that in terms of the meditation, then dance, and the emotional side of it. So, as we were talking about before, I'm not a meditation teacher, but I actually am. On the Bloom app, there's going to be an ad on here somewhere. So,
plug
at our line events and at our at the Bloom talks, when I host a meditation, I do a 15-minute meditation at the end to wrap everything up.
Yeah.
And this was conscious podcast, unconsciously, I figured out this flow of 15 minutes of like 4 different songs. And for me, it was like, okay, when I want to go into a meditation, I want to have an experience that changes me. That I come out of this and go, oh, I felt that, I seen that, I want to take action or go along that path now. So I want it to really have an impact on someone. So my sequence is it starts and it's like the music's very, very soft and it like gets people to relax and come in awareness of their body. And then it moves into our higher self. What does a person look like and feel like without the limitations on them? It's you. You're basically looking at you in the mirror, but you don't know it's a mirror. I'm just this person in front of you. And then towards when we get to the end, you're like, okay, like you have that picture of that person that you know, that ideal version of you that has all the qualities you want, all of that. And then it's like you reach out and you realize you're blocked and it's a mirror. You're looking at you, like it's all within you. It's just taking that away. And then we move into the next part, which is the love, the self-love, which is a song that makes everyone cry. And it's you know, I like making people cry.
It's good to release.
Yeah.
Everyone should cry.
And it's such, like this song, I do this sequence to myself in my room, in the mirror, and it's like, it makes me cry because I get so into it and the words are just amazing. James Bay.
Music is powerful.
Yeah.
I use music a lot for shifts.
Yeah.
It's extremely powerful.
Yeah. Wild Love by James Bay, like gets me every time.
James Bay, yeah.
Yeah, such a good voice too. And then like when people are in this, like that release happens and then it goes, we move into Gratitude, which is like another uplifting sort of song. So you still get that emotional side, but it like, you start being appreciative for all those things. Then it throws everyone off because then I go, okay, we've got one more song. I need you to stand up, close your eyes, and just move to the music. And it's, I don't know if you know it, at Bag Raiders Shooting Star.
No.
do 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 do. Anyway, it's a real like
You pictured it really well.
Thank you. You wouldn't expect it, and people are like real awkward to start moving. But I'm like, close your eyes. You're in your own journey. I'm
Yeah.
not watching you. I might be filming, but like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't tell them that. I get permission afterwards. Then they start moving, and I go crazy. Like I'm that person
And you
with
should.
like I don't have that filter. Like if we put music on now, I'll dance.
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah.
just love
Yep.
movement. And when people go through it, you can see how awkward they are at the start. And then it comes to a real slow moment and we do like this little process. And then it's like 1 minute left. How would your higher self, like your child, how would that person dance? And then they
Because
go,
then you're embodying it.
yes.
And that's where the change happens.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that energy in motion moves that emotion.
Yep.
That's the whole Tony Robbins was just
100%.
like, wow, like through that meditate. I done this just unconsciously, put that sequence together because you go through the high.
Did you wing it in the moment or did you pre-plan it?
It's pre-planned, but like I know what to say
Yeah.
off the top of my head. But in terms of putting it together, it was just like I just feel this song,
Yeah.
this song hits the points, and I'd love to put them all together.
Yeah.
It's like a journey meditation.
Yeah.
And yeah, it takes them high, like onto their higher self, all of that. Doesn't bring them down necessarily, but like gets them in touch with like heart,
Yeah.
because like soul to start with, then heart to go with, love and gratitude, and then it's dance. And it's like, yes, you can feel those things, and maybe it's some pain, maybe it's resistance, maybe it's just love, but then move it.
Oh,
And everyone leaves on a happy note,
Yeah.
hugging. They usually stay and dance to all the other songs as well. But it's
Yeah.
not just leaving like in that low point.
yeah. Movement is key. I think that people really neglect movement. They neglect their bodies and they actually don't allow themselves to be in tune with their bodies. Our bodies are so powerful. They literally communicate to us. If we have physical injury, if we have any physical ailments, disease, or anything like that, it's actually our body just signifying that there's an emotion that we haven't faced yet,
Yep.
that there's something that needs to be healed. And I kind of imagine it like when we experience trauma, that emotion is kind of an energy. And if we don't actually release and heal through that energy, it then manifests physically in the body.
Into problems and
Yeah.
illnesses. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I actually, when I was in my last year of uni, as you know, I studied dance at uni. I did my dissertation, which is, I think it's called a thesis here.
Yep.
It's like your big kind of assignment. I did that on how improvisation, so movement, improvise, changes your mental, emotional, and physical state. Because I was so interested how I would wake up at 8 a.m, sometimes most of the time hungover, or just stressed from work and everything like that. And I'd wake up feeling a certain way. I'd go into an hour-and-a-half dance class. I'd improvise, I'd move, and I'd walk out feeling like the whole world has changed.
Brand new.
And I was like, I need to explore this. And at the same time, I was actually studying dance movement psychotherapy. So really the psychotherapy,
Whoa, yeah.
yeah, the kind of psychotherapy aspect behind it as well. So it all kind of intertwined. And I just think it's fascinating. Like people need to move. And even like last night, I got home and I was like, I feel like just in a weird space at the moment. I'm just going to put on some Travis Scott.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to dance like no one's watching. And I just don't care. Like,
Yeah.
you've got to move to make yourself, just release and express. And it's just, it's amazing.
That is so cool. I had a conversation last night with a friend, and it was just an open conversation on like, do you think the things that you think in your mind, these thoughts of, and the emotional pain, does that then manifest into problems in the body? And I listen to a lot of Joe Dispenza and people
he's
like
awesome.
that. And I've seen a lot of the scientific background to it, but I was just asking a friend that's not really, never spoke to
Yeah.
about this stuff before. And he was like, I don't see why it wouldn't. Because, that's that energy storing. And we're talking about how, when we suppress it, it turns into other things. But
Yeah.
people think it's just a external factor.
Yeah.
And it's like, but our human experience
Everything is connected.
is, everything.
Yeah.
Like external, internal,
Yep.
holistic. That's why I love, that's why I was like, explain that.
Yeah.
Because that approach is like, it's like trying to, and I've got a program coming up, so like trying not to like explain the whole thing, but when you focus on one area of life, but you don't focus on the others, how do you expect to then, raise
It's like-
that?
Yeah, it's like when people go to the doctors for a physical. I'm not saying that Western doctors is a bad thing. I definitely grew up in a holistic environment. So my parents didn't encourage me to go to the doctors. We kind of sorted it out with aromatherapy and meditation and stuff.
Here's an oil. Here's an essential oil.
Yeah. Here's some grapefruit oil. But yeah, so I think, you know, there's got to be a combination of East meets West. I think both have their place, and I think, you know, I would go to the doctors to kind of get a diagnosis of something if something was physically going on, but I wouldn't just stop there. I would also go and see a naturopath. I would also do meditation. I would go and see a holistic coach, because to every physical ailment there's also an emotional and a mental root cause. And I've actually been posting about this on my Instagram recently. Is like when you do, like I have what I call the Bible at home, which is basically a description of metaphysical illnesses. Yeah. So it's got a whole list of physical conditions and the emotional and mental root cause of that.
So how I heard it recently was for every action, there's an equal or greater emotional reaction to that. So yeah, absolutely. And I think like the other day, for example, my knees were quite sore. And I was like, okay, so my body's communicating with me that something's going on. And I know just from experience that the knees are connected with being inflexible with life changes. Ooh. And I've been through a lot of life changes recently. And as I mentioned to you briefly before, I've recently moved apartments, and I was actually very attached to the apartment that I was in. And I almost wasn't accepting that I was moving away. I was stuck in the energy of that apartment, and I needed to be flexible with the fact that, you know, wherever I go, whether it's, you know, Melbourne or England, wherever, like, as long as I have my mind, body and spirit, I'm safe, I'm secure, I'm at peace. And that was something that I had to really practice. But I think the uncertainty of it made me quite stubborn. Like I was just stubborn in my ways. So as soon as I recognized that and, you know, I meditated on it and I journaled about it, I was able to release that stubbornness, and and then my knees are fine. Yeah. Okay. So this is where I like to see both sides of everything, like just have a really like zoom out even further and go, okay, change. Could you have done some vigorous exercise the day before on concrete and your knees be sore from that?
Yeah, I did sprints.
There you go. Yeah. So
and I know that. Yeah. And I 100% know that. So
there's some people that full go, that stuff's bullshit. You just, you know, your knees are weak. Then you've got the other side that are like, no, it's just this spiritual thing. And it's like, yeah, but it's look at both. Bring it both in. Yeah.
That's the thing is we're complex beings. Yeah. We're not just physical. We're not just mental. We're not just emotional. So why just focus on one or two of them? Like you do have to look at the whole package. And I think when you do that, you leave no stone unturned. Yeah. You know, you really kind of, and that's where I think you really are able to grow the most, and you're able to experience personal transformation because you're not being blinded to anything. You really are kind of looking at all areas.
Yeah. I love that. We've gone on a massive rant, but it's good. Love it. That's the next podcast.
Number 2.
It's good. Would you say you're living your purpose?
Interesting question. So I believe that everyone's purpose is the same. So
okay, this is the first time I've heard this one.
Yeah. So this is the thing, is everyone is searching for their purpose. They're like, what is my purpose? What am I here to do? Blah, blah, blah. I believe that we're all here to do the same thing. We're all here to contribute to the evolution of humanity and the planet. So I think the purpose is all the same. How we individually choose to pursue that is where the individuality comes in. So that's the exciting part. So, for example, you're doing it through content creation and podcasts and events. Some people might do it through artistic ventures. Some people might do it through business, become CEOs or entrepreneurs. I think the underlying thing is that we all want to have an impact because we're all here to evolve. But how we kind of individually express that is what the journey is. And I also think just on that point that when people are struggling to find their purpose, I just say to people, you realize that if you look back on your life, your purpose is there. The clues are there. Like if you look back at the experiences that gave you the most joy in life, like when you were a kid, when you were a teenager, you know, in your early adulthood, but when did you feel that you were thriving the most? When did you feel the most alive? That is an indication that that is part of your purpose. What are you gifted at? What do you like, what are you good at? What are your talents? That is a clue to your purpose. So I feel like people are always searching outside for their purpose. The purpose is literally your life to this date. Like, your life has left clues. You've just got to go back. You've got to trace it back. With me, I actually did this recently, and I wrote down all of these memories. And kind of, everything that I enjoyed the most, and when I felt like I was thriving, and I wrote all this down and looking at it on paper, and I'm like, wow, that was so easy. Why for years have I been like, oh, what's my purpose? What? Like, it's so easy. Like, just look back on your life. What was the question? Oh, do I think I'm living my purpose? So I think my purpose is to be a teacher. I do. I think, I've done a lot of dance teaching. Like, I've done a lot of management roles, a lot of coaching and that kind of thing. So I think the thing that gives me the most fire is actually like allowing someone to rediscover something in themselves that they weren't aware that they had. To me, that's teaching. Like, if I teach you, I'm not teaching you anything new. I just have tools and techniques that are allowing you to rediscover that within yourself. And I think at the moment, through what I share on my social media, through the conversations I have with people on a day-to-day basis, yes, I am living my purpose because I am doing that. But it's just not at the scale that I know that I want to play with. So I am living my purpose every day, but not at the scale that I'm ready to kind of play with. Yeah.
And that's all. I think that's all part of the journey. Like, you can still be doing it now. It's just at this level in this season, at this point.
Yeah.
And then growth.
Yeah.
Comes with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. What is... Yep, I restarted the camera. It's all good. What is success to you?
Another good question. You're full of good questions.
Thank you. That's the whole podcast is full of them.
Success to me is living as my fullest self. I think we do all come into this world with our own individual gifts and talents, and I think a lot of us reject a lot of that because we get sucked into other people's visions of success. But I think if I'm following my own, if I'm saying yes to what excites me personally in every moment and in every opportunity, to me that is success. I think success isn't something that's separate in the near future. In the future, it's not something separate to where I am now. Like, I am successful every single day because I'm showing up as my full self and being authentic. Yeah.
I love that, and it's like that success then doesn't come from the external.
No,
it's all internal of you feeling good about yourself, but being yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
What is the worst thing that has ever happened to you, and how is that the best thing that has ever happened to you?
That, I feel like that's quite a hard one to pinpoint because I feel like there's been several kind of defining moments in my life that's been a hard time but has been a blessing in disguise. I'd say probably what I mentioned before to do with my back injury a few years ago. I think that was probably one of the worst things because, one, it was so excruciatingly painful to the point where I couldn't breathe, I couldn't sleep, like it was so bad. And I obviously at that time had to give up my dance business, which I'd worked very hard for. It was doing really well. Like, I was also getting creative direction opportunities coming in. So I was a creative director for a music video and I loved it so much, and other people were writing to me.
Choreographing dance.
Yeah.
Yep.
So choreographing and also helping with the direction, so the whole kind of layout of how the music video goes. And that was so much fun, and I loved that kind of creative aspect of it. And I started to get a lot of people reaching out to me to do work, but I was going through this injury and I was kind of like in silence. I was in so much pain and I didn't know where it was going to go. But I think having that injury and me stopping my dance business was such a blessing because it was the reason that I came back to Australia. And the transformation, the growth, and even the people that I've connected with in the last couple of years has just been so empowering. And if that didn't happen, I'd still be in England kind of building it up, and I wouldn't actually be on the path that is right for me. And also, as we were just talking about, all physical injury relates to an emotional, mental root cause. The back injury I actually experienced for the first time 6 years earlier when I was at uni. And when I was at uni, I was going through a lot of problems with self-esteem, self-love, self-confidence, and that kind of thing.
Are they connected?
Very much so.
Okay.
So the back is connected with self-worth. So the fact that this came up again, and it came up so strong and was so painful, I was like, okay, it's because I'm ready to heal now. I'm ready to actually finally accept myself and practice self-love and know that I'm worthy and that I am enough, and, you know, all that good juicy stuff. So yeah, that's what I've been working on. And over here in Australia, I go and see a chiropractor that does NET, which is neuro-emotional therapy. So he basically looks at the injury in your body, and then he gets you to talk about the emotions behind it. He asks you questions. He digs deep whilst he's doing the corrections and stuff. And he has, I don't know what it is, he has this little tool where he zaps out. Yeah, you might know what I mean. He zaps it out, and so he gets you to really be heightened in that emotional state that the back is triggering, and then he releases it physically as you release it emotionally. And that's just been very transformative for me as well. So yeah, it was hard to go through at the time, but it had to come up because I needed to start loving myself, basically. Yeah.
How amazing that we have these modalities available like that.
Yeah.
To release something like that. Just,
it's mind blowing.
Give me this contact. All right. You go see these people. I love trying things. So that sounds incredible.
Yeah.
What's the best advice you've ever been given?
I think for
me... Or
me...
the advice that stands out the most?
Yeah, for me, the biggest thing that springs to mind is confront people that piss you off. Can we swear on this podcast?
You can, yeah.
Confront people that piss you off. Yep. So Are
you thinking piss you off was swearing, or you've got more words?
In the bank.
Yeah.
I don't know how this is going to go.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, so when I was at uni, well, basically just to get a bit of context to that. So growing up, I wasn't confrontational. I grew up in a very happy, positive family environment, which sounds lovely and absolutely was, but that also comes with its baggage, because when I was then in high school, I didn't know how to deal with people that argued or how to deal with people that
didn't agree with you, and
or people that would get angry and people that would like bitch. Like I was like, why are you talking bad about that person? Like you were nice to them a minute ago and then now you're not. And I could never get involved in any of that stuff, and it kind of it definitely separated me from everyone. I never really felt like I belong anywhere. Like I was definitely an outcast because everyone was getting involved in this drama and everything, and I was just, you know, on the outside of it. I didn't want to get involved. It didn't feel natural to me. But I also realized that I needed to stand up for myself, and that's what I didn't do when I was in school. I never confronted someone if they annoyed me or pissed me off or whatever. And I was at uni, and I was living in a house with about, I think it was 4 other people. And there was one girl that I had a lot of conflict with. There was just a disconnect. There was the communication we had, there was just something that wasn't clicking. And she was the type of person that would get angry quite easily and she would blow up. Yeah. And I'm the kind of person that would run away. So every time she would get angry, I'd go to my room and lock the door. Or every time she annoyed me, I just wouldn't say anything, I'd walk away. Yeah. And it was kind of my protection mechanism, because I didn't like conflict or confrontation, because I grew up in a family with no arguments. You know, I've never seen my parents argue. I've never argued with them. So that was really hard for me. And I ended up getting really bad anxiety. So I started having panic attacks. I was actually driving on the motorway one day and I fainted at the wheel because I was just I had all this like built anger. Yeah. At that time, I didn't realize it was anger. I just knew that the anxiety I was feeling was, I've never felt it to that extent before. And this is actually the first time I realized how the body communicates with you as well, the emotions that you haven't processed. So I ended up going to see the uni counsellor, and she just said to me, she was like, Emma, next time this girl pisses you off, tell her. And I was like, is it really that simple? So I went home that day after the session, and this girl started getting angry with me again, and she was shouting at me and she was calling me names. And I just turned around to her and I was like, you're fucking annoying me. I was just like, shut the fuck up. And everyone just went silent, because I'm not that type of person. Like I never, swear at people, or I'd never call people names or anything like that. And she didn't bother me again because I expressed how I was feeling.
Whoa. So you set a boundary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I set boundaries, and I was also just standing in my power. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that I was being aggressive in the terms of coming at someone.
Yeah, like confrontation, argument
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. I was just claiming my space, which is something that I realized I never did growing up. I was very apologetic for just being here. I was very apologetic for just taking up space in the world and just being here. And I think saying that was almost me standing my ground and being like, no, I am here. I deserve to be here. You shouldn't talk to me like that. And I'm actually, setting boundaries and standing up for myself. And that was just the biggest game changer for me. So now if someone annoys me, I just tell them straight up. I'm like, dude, what's going on? Yeah. And I encourage other people to do the same. Like, you know, even with my partner, if we have like a tiff or anything like that, I'm like, tell me what you're annoyed about. Just say it out loud, because when you say it, it just releases it. Yeah. And it's also, that's when the healing can take place. Yeah.
An understanding of what's actually happening, because you might actually not know that what you're doing is annoying that person. And if they hold it in, it's like, well, how will I ever know that there is something? And by you getting it out, then it creates a communication, and that communication, open communication, you can then discuss it and be like, oh, you know that maybe you not making the bed in the morning actually like annoys me, or you're not cleaning up something like that actually, like, and but then it's also like a self-reflecting on why does that annoy me. But then to them, they're like, oh, I just thought that was normal type thing. And then now that it's out there, you can be like, okay, what's the solution to this? How can we compromise together?
Exactly. Communication is key, and just expressing how you're feeling, because if you don't, you hold it in, and then it just creates this built up anger or aggression.
Example. I say example, but I just tried to sound so like Australian then with like, example. Not to say you're going to make me like start talking English with a British accent. Example. If something like with your partner's like annoying you, you don't say anything for weeks, that's going to like...
It's going to come out in a different way. Oh, yes. It's going to blow up. It's going to be a volcano.
Yeah. Like talk about things. Yeah. That's, even like in my, like when I'm dating, I think because I'm so upfront, it is like kind of like throws people back. Yeah. Not off, but throws them back, because they're like, oh, like no one would ever say that. And it's like, yeah, but I'm not saying this. Or even with friends, we're so open and honest. And I love that about my best friends, because and even my accountability partners, my business partners, you call them out, but you call them forward. How can we then... like, we're noticing this, and it's affecting us this way, but I know it's affecting you. Do you want that, or do you want to shift? How can we then like do that? It's not about saying, "Hey, you're doing this. It's annoying me. Like, you need to change." Yeah. It's some people just don't know, but people appreciate it when you're honest. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Communicate.
And I think, I mean, I'm an Aries as well, so.
Don't go too deep into this stuff, but go explain.
We're just straight up. Yeah. Like, we are straight to the point. And I think, you know, now that I am honest about how I feel and I do confront people, it has got me in trouble. I'm not going to lie. And I remember my mum saying to me, you know, maybe not be so honest, you know, just rein it in a little bit, because I can say things in such a direct way that people aren't expecting it. But I just don't beat around the bush. Like, I'm just straight to the point, and I'm very transparent and very honest about it. And not everyone is like that. And it can come off very direct, too direct sometimes. And I do understand that. And I am a fire sign, so I do have a lot of fire energy in me. So for me, it's learning how to communicate it in a way that, maybe isn't so direct, that would be understood by the other person. But it's so important to express it. That's the main thing.
I love that. We could do a whole podcast on that.
Yeah, for sure.
What advice would you give your 16-year-old self?
To practice self-love.
How? How would you explain that? What tools and tips would you give?
Yeah, I think, do you know what? It's just understanding yourself. It's just, I think I realized that I lacked self-love in myself. One, because I sent a lot of hate to myself, like physically. Like, I'd look in the mirror and I'd be like, oh, I look like this. I'm too big. I'm too, you know. I'd put a lot of hate on myself, and it just made me feel really unconfident. Like, I grew up with very little self-confidence. And the kind of I think when you're in that age as well, when you're around 16, that's when you're discovering yourself. It's not an easy time because you're in school, everyone's kind of trying to figure out who they are and what they're doing, and everyone's kind of attaching to certain groups to kind of form their identity. And I think as long as you love yourself, the rest will follow. Like the right stuff will come in, the right people you'll be connected with. And the turning point for me was actually in my last year of uni. So it took me that long to kind of realize how important this was. And I was doing a study at uni on social media, funnily enough. And the whole thing was about online personas and how people use that to cover up insecurities. So I started delving into self-esteem. And I read this book called The 8 Pillars of Self-Esteem. I think it's by, I can't remember. I think it's by Brandon someone. But that changed my life because I was actually going through it. Obviously, it was an academic book, so you're reading it to kind of break down everything, what self-esteem is, where it comes from, and everything like that. But as I was reading it, it was therapy because I was actually, the more I had understanding about it and what it is and where it comes from, I was understanding where my lack of it was coming from. And I think a lot of it for me was from my parents. You know, we don't realize how much we do absorb from our parents growing up. And you know, my parents love them to pieces, but they're not very confident people. They do kind of struggle with self-confidence and self-esteem. So I kind of obviously idolized them growing up, and I kind of mirrored that. And I had to realize that I'm not my parents. Maybe that's their thing. Now it's time for me to change. And it's time for me to love myself. And as soon as I read that book and I started affirming things to myself, just affirmations are so, so powerful. As soon as I started, you know, waking up in the morning saying, I love myself, my full self completely and deeply, you know, amongst other things, and my whole life changed. Like I met a really amazing guy. I started just doing opportunities. That's when I went to London and I was doing all these music videos and stuff. I don't know if I would have taken that step if I didn't feel like I was worthy enough to do it. So that was a big turning point for me.
Whoa. And I think it's like you idolize your parents, and I guess you take those traits and habits and beliefs because that's your environment. Like that's what you spend the most time around. Yeah. Key. Your environment is key.
100%.
You surround yourself with. Yeah. And one thing I want to touch on is though, how by having that lack of self-confidence when you were 16, lack of self-love, how did that affect your life?
I had really bad social anxiety and binge eating as well. So I think like I remember being at school and I was kind of, you know, I was with the people that were popular or whatever, but I never felt like I actually truly belonged there because I just couldn't connect with anyone as my authentic self, if that makes sense. And I think the low self-confidence didn't allow me to express myself authentically. I would literally sit there at the canteen table and everyone would be having a conversation and I would have so much stuff come up that I wanted to say. And I felt so nervous to even say it that I would just swallow it and sit there and not say anything.
Why?
Fear.
Of?
Being humiliated.
Being humiliated by sharing what?
Who I really am.
Yeah. So that fear of, because humiliated in the way that like not being accepted, like you would share it and then what if they didn't like it? Like you'd be...
Yeah. The fear of not being accepted is huge for me, and I'm still working through it now because it's so deeply rooted. But I think I've worked through a lot of it to get to a place where now I realize kind of where this all comes from. But it was a fear of not being accepted. I mean, I've actually traced this back. Now this sounds quite deep, but I feel like we're far enough in the podcast
it's
to
so
go
good
there.
Because we were talking about this before and I'm like, how can I get to this conversation? And you kind of got there and I was like, yes.
We did it. So I've kind of traced it back, right? And I've realized that, so with my parents, they couldn't conceive. They had trouble conceiving. So my older brother and sister are artificially inseminated. Now, after that, my dad said he didn't want any more children because it was just too painful to go through, the thing of trying to conceive. And then I came along naturally, which I obviously think is a miracle. But, to me, there's this feeling that I wasn't wanted and I came here anyway. And then I also look very different to my brother and sister. So they're both blonde. My brother's got blue eyes. My sister's got hazel eyes. And I'm just dark, So, I think that was a thing, is I just felt like an outcast in my family. And I remember my sister saying to me, "You're an accident. You're an accident. You know, we were supposed to be here because they wanted us. You're an accident." My sister would say, "You're adopted," because I looked very different to them. And I think from there, it just snowballed. I went to school and I was like, well, I'm not wanted in my family. You know, I wasn't even wanted, you know, on this earth. So why would I be wanted in a friendship group? Why would anyone want to hang out with me? Why would anyone, you know? And then another memory that was really strong for me that I recently worked through energy healing was my best friend. I was literally so close with her, shared everything with her. At the end of year 6, which is the end of primary school, she said to me, "Emma, I don't think we should be best friends anymore." And I was like, "Why?" And she was like, "I don't think you're cool enough." And I was just like, what, heartbroken. And in that moment, I just made the decision that I'm safer by myself because I'm not hurt.
Walls go up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had my body armor there. I was like, okay, well, that's fine. If she doesn't want me, I'll just be by myself. I'll be independent. You know, my mum and dad didn't want me. My brother and sister didn't want me. You know, my friend doesn't want me. It's fine. I could be by myself. And I can feel myself getting emotional when I talk about it because it's a really deep thing for me. And then obviously that's when my experiences going through high school just reflected that, the social anxiety, because I didn't feel like anyone wanted me. So I felt like, why was I even there, kind of thing. And yeah, the fear of not being accepted has come up again recently in my close friendships and my personal relationship. So about a year ago, I actually had an argument with my best friend, and we never normally argue. But she was like, you know, you're keeping me at arm's length distance. Like, we're very close and I love her so much and I just want the best for her. But she was like, you're still not giving me everything.
She was saying this or you?
She was saying it.
Yep.
She was saying that I wasn't giving her everything. Like, I wasn't wanting to see her all the time and I wasn't wanting to text her and stuff like that. And I think for me, it's because I felt unsafe. Like, it's fine seeing her now and then, but if I get too close to someone, I'm letting her in. And I massively struggle with letting people in. And I'm fortunate enough that I've had really good friends around me for a long time now. But again, it's that whole thing of keeping them at arm's length distance to a certain extent. And I didn't realize I was doing that, but it was just a protection because I was hurt in primary school and, you know, in my family. And yeah, so that kind of opened me up to it. And then in the last few months, I'd say I've really worked on that and actually opening up to people intimately and letting people into my life and knowing that, you know, if I am my authentic self, I will be accepted. And I think that's the most important thing, not to pretend to be anyone else to fit in or, you know, not to have this exterior to, you know, a certain extent, but just if I'm living as me fully and deeply, I will be accepted by the people that love and support me. Yeah. And I've got to be able to let them in and show them through expressing my love for them. And that's something that I've really, really struggled with.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
it's so
like
deep and vulnerable. Like, it's part of my journey as well, and it's something that, you know, I share at all our events when I do share my story, was that, you know, for so long I tried to be something else because to fit in, to be accepted. To me even sharing stuff like my actual story, like what my ego wants and doesn't want people to hear was so like, what if I put it out and people don't like me? What if I wear my hair naturally curly and girls don't like me or I'm not accepted? Like, no, I want to do what I feel has worked in the past to stay in that safe zone, that comfort. But it was suppressing and at the end of the day, it was like your best friends will be your best friends because you're authentically you. They know you. And I always was so open with them. I think something with me is like I've always been, I can go really deep with people and show all my sides of me in the right context. And for me, it was like when I actually, it was having that realization as well. But my kind of view on it was like, I'm going to be me because it's actually pretty hard to be someone else and try and keep that persona up. Be me unapologetically. Like this is who I am.
That's the key word there.
Yeah. And if people accept me, great. If they don't, great.
And be okay with that.
Yeah. That's not the people that I need around me. And you can, like, I relate to dating because I know a lot of people on dating apps and stuff like that. Like, if someone is into you, they're into you. If they're not, cool. Don't try and force something. That's when you start to change to get someone. Imagine this. You're with a partner and they know you for something else, and then you then be yourself, and they go, hang on, that's not what I've seen the past couple of months. How much better would it feel to just be you and be accepted and loved for that?
Yeah.
Because people will.
Yeah.
If you hide it, they're never going to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I was hiding.
Yeah.
I was literally, that is just a word that's so strong for me, is most of my life I was hiding. I wasn't myself. I was neglecting a huge part of myself. And I think it was so painful for me, everything that I went through with being left out of situations, not being invited to parties, and, you know, being that outcast in school. I've completely lost my train of thought. Hang on. What were we talking about? Hiding.
Showing your authentic self.
Funnily enough, that just happened. So I think it was so painful that I disassociated myself from it. So it's only recently that I've kind of, the last few years, that I've been able to go back into those memories and be completely honest and be like, wow, that felt fucking shit. But I was so disassociated from it because I didn't want to be the victim and I didn't want to be the one that was bullied and that kind of thing, that I didn't actually face it. And so this is kind of what I've been through recently, and the depression that I've recently just come out of and experienced. I realized that that's what I was suppressing, because I believe that depression is suppression. So depression is actually because you're...
Whoa, say that again.
Depression is suppression.
Yep.
So depression is something... depression comes up because you're suppressing something. You're suppressing emotional trauma that you haven't dealt with yet. And it's going to keep coming up until you face that and you kind of face it head on. And, you know, I've had family and friends that have been through depression, and I never really understood the extent of it and how it really makes you feel until I've experienced it myself the last year. And it's so hard because when you're in... Have you ever experienced depression or anything?
I would say no. I've had depressed feelings and thoughts, but not to the point where, like I've heard of other experiences. No. Yeah.
That's the thing, is I didn't realize what it was like until, for me, like when I'm in it, it's like I refer to it like the black hole. Like you just, I am a very bubbly, positive, high energy person. And when I've been through these bouts of depression, I don't even want to get out of bed. I just have no energy for life, to talk to people, to like, it's just like I'm a complete shell of myself, and you just kind of like, life loses all meaning in a certain way. And, but this time round was very transformational, because I was like, okay. And the thing is with depression, what helps me get through it is I know it's temporary. I know it's going to pass. And the thing is, it is there for a reason. Although it's like awful going through it, you really do have to delve deep into, okay, what are you suppressing? And this time round, I realized what it was, because I was having all these memories come up in my dreams, or if I was just, you know, walking around, I'd have these memories come up from childhood. And I was like, well, my subconscious is playing them to me for a reason. So let me just delve into this. And I opened up to my partner about it, and I told him these memories and how I felt. And I was just crying and crying and crying. And he was like, have you ever told anyone that? And I was like, no. And I was like, I think I didn't tell anyone because I suppressed it so deeply and disassociated myself from it, that to me, it wasn't even part of my experience, you know? And just opening up to him and saying all this stuff and having this release, that is when I started to come out of the depression. I went to bed that night and I felt just like I was healing. Like I felt this positive energy come over me. You know, when you kind of feel like the vibrations running through you. And I felt like I was just, like myself was starting to come back again. And even better than before, because I was rejecting this side of my life because I disassociated myself from it, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm going down a rabbit hole here. But
that's good.
because I rejected my younger self, that side of myself, I was never going to feel whole. And the fact that this depression came up allowed me to face it and heal it. I was then able to integrate that side of myself that I rejected, that child, and kind of integrate it back into myself now. And this is where I am. This is where you're meeting me now, is in this place where I feel whole. And now I can explore, you know, the world with this kind of new sense of self.
I love it. That is so cool. And it's like, there's so many ways we could go into, I guess, the next, or delve even deeper into that. But again, that's the next podcast. How do you think people can become more fulfilled in life?
Oh, I think seeing every day as an adventure. I think people are always waiting for something to happen to then feel happy. but just wake up every morning and just be present in that moment. Like yesterday doesn't matter, tomorrow doesn't matter. Just be present in the moment. And when you're present in the moment, you feel so alive because you're not living in the past and you're not obsessed with the future. You're just in the moment, and just to see that as an adventure. I kind of wake up now and every day is an adventure. You know, how can I find out something about someone that they wouldn't tell anyone else? Or how can I, you know, spark up a conversation with someone that looks like they wouldn't talk to it? You know, just like little challenges I like to do. And I think just also just living with complete compassion. I think people are so self-absorbed, to be completely honest, I've realized. But just living with so much compassion and just having the intention when you wake up in the morning to have compassion for yourself, and everyone you meet with have complete pure compassion, and you will be amazed at how your life will change, because things just come in for you. You meet amazing people and stuff like that because you're living from that high vibrational state.
I love it.
Don't know if that answers the question. But
Yes. What does it mean to be conscious?
To me, to be conscious is having a deep sense of awareness for the self, for others, and for the environment. Yep. I think it's just awareness.
What is awareness?
I feel like it's like a knowing. It's just being aware of yourself and everyone else. It's just a knowing of how everything is interconnected. And I think it just allows people, it definitely allows me to navigate my life a whole lot easier when I live from a conscious place, because I'm able to just be aware of the interactions I have with people, that it's actually just from me, you know, and it just, it allows you to just, I'm lost for words. I know what I mean. But just having that, I would say to anyone, if you were going to develop one skill, it would be self-awareness. Because I just think that's a game changer for personal and professional development, you know.
Because it allows you to self-analyze, it allows you to grow, it allows you to see who you are and then also who you want to be, but then know that, you know, that awareness is like, okay, I can, I guess, be in the moment, be grateful for that, but I can also, how can I improve in the way that I can add more good things into my life.
Yeah.
But also be aware of how I affect others and how others affect me.
Absolutely.
Therefore, I can be aware of myself and how I can be full. Because if you're suppressing things and you're not aware of that, by gaining that self-awareness, you then can see, oh, wow, you can start connecting things like that interconnection you were saying. And that's what then you grow and you transform and you heal yourself just through having that self-awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think having the awareness as well is knowing that, you know, our outer worlds are a reflection of our inner worlds, and everything is a mirror. So I think having self-awareness, say in relationships, for example, if you have conflict happening, rather than being like, he said this and he said that and he made me feel like this, he didn't. It's just the way you feel inside, because the universe is just reflecting it back to you, what you need to learn and heal. And just having that sense of awareness. And so for me personally, if I do have conflict with someone or something makes me feel a certain way, a situation or circumstance, I just think, okay, just reflecting on myself, how does that make me feel? That makes me feel unloved. Okay, if that makes me feel unloved, what part of myself am I not loving? And then you just delve deeper, and it, you know, it stops the blame game. You're not blaming anything else. You're not blaming, you know, the environment or your friends or your relationships. You're actually just realizing that everything comes from you, and just having that sense of awareness and how things make you feel. That's when you can grow. Yeah.
And noticing those things, like whether it annoys you or whatever, it's actually something within you that, like, okay, but how do I see that inside myself? Why does it actually annoy me?
It's
what do I
triggering you
do?
for a reason.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like, even with comparison, like, why do I idolize that in someone and don't see it within myself? How can I find it within myself? What you see in me is also within you.
Yeah.
And finding all those things. And again, this is another rabbit hole we could go down, but we're wrapping everything up. It was so good that we touched on that as well. Is there... Oh, how can people connect with you? What's the best ways to find you?
So I hang out on Instagram mainly. So that's at Emma Louise Sampson, and that's SAMPSON. I think that's probably about it at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, but my channels will grow from there, and hopefully a lot of exciting things that coming up that people can kind of connect with me on other platforms. But for now, yeah, come say hi on Instagram.
Amazing. And I want to wrap this up by saying, like, thank you so much, one, for connecting and for, you know, jumping into the conscious vortex.
Yeah.
But, like, agreeing to me, being so open and vulnerable in sharing this with all of us, but then also on your own journey and realizing those things, but stepping into that. I think that's, you know, I'm so proud of you for doing that, but it's also something to be noted that you've seen it and you could have rejected it and stayed in, you know, the comfort of rejecting those things and suppressing. But you were like, no, I want to grow. I want to, it's for me, but it also, and it also benefits the people around me and also allows me to live the best life possible or make the most of my time by stepping into that. Even when all this shit has happened, these challenges, you've faced it and you've kept coming back. And yeah, I'm so proud of you, as I was saying before, but it's like so amazing to hear that. And I'm so happy that you have shared on such a deep and raw level, and all the things that you do now, like helping people, teaching people. It's incredible. Like, I love that service to humanity that you have.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. And for anyone that's watching on YouTube, if you're not watching on YouTube, go check it out. Like, we're in a cool setting and all that. But then also, like, if anything in this has resonated with you, reach out. You know, Emma and myself, we love these communications and talking. If anything's triggered you, reach out as well. But if anything's inspired you as well, but also share this with people you think it would benefit as well. Because if you're listening to this and you go, oh, that sounds like me, or it sounds like my friends, the more we share this,
the more we help.
Yeah, and the more awareness we all get. That's why this is the Conscious Podcast. It's helping everyone. It's making this viral so that we can then, you know, that's the best way you can help the people you love, or not help. Yeah, help. It can be help or inspire the people around you is by sharing stuff like this. And Emma's such a great role model leader in this field to be able to share with people. So I can't wait to break this down to little snippets and put it on Instagram and stuff like that, especially the self-love and all of that.
Yeah.
But make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe on the podcast app. Everything will be in the show notes to follow Emma, myself, to check out more. I love you guys. Thank you so much, Emma. Can't wait to catch up again soon. And all the exciting things that we're both going to do, and probably together, which is going to be so cool. Until next time, guys, take care. Peace.
Peace out.